that's a good set for sure. All right, Steady Dividends asks, could you discuss the Protestant presuppositions about the atonement which caused them to diverge from the Orthodox understanding? Do you have a sneak peek of your future atonement book? Ooh, exclusive.
Yeah, that's the book I'm writing now. So I did my PhD dissertation was on 1 John 2 verse 2d. So I wrote a couple of hundred words on 5 Greek words, 2 of which were and the.
Nice.
Nice. But so I did a lot with atonement in that, and so I'm doing that's the book I'm writing right now, and it's going to go through history and sort of show the development. And really, what happens in the West, it's not just Protestantism. Like when you get to PSA in the Reformed writers of the 17th century, right? The Protestant scholastics, that's sort of the full-blown thing, but there's a trail that leads there. And so major stepping stones on the way. The first really is in the West, them wrestling with universalism. Because they want to say, well, obviously Christ, his sacrifice is sufficient for every human being who has ever lived. But it only gets applied to a subset of human beings who have ever lived, if you're not a universalist. And so how does that work? And that last part I just said is what's important, because at every step along the way, how does that work is the problem. There's an assumption that there's a kind of mechanistic way that it works, right? Not just analogies or something that might shed light on some element of it, but an actual way it works that we can understand as humans. And so you get Peter Lombard. He makes the distinction between sufficiency and efficiency, right? So Christ's sacrifice is sufficient to save everyone. It is only efficient for those to whom it is applied. And then for him, it's applied primarily through the sacraments. You get into grace, you get into the early theology of merit that starts developing in the West. And then when you get to Anselm's Cur Deus Homo, that's where the idea of justice, sort of cosmic justice, enters the picture. But his conception and what becomes known as satisfaction theory is not really criminal justice the way we think about it. It's more like honor in an honor culture, right? Like honor in an honor culture, that our sin has dishonored the God who created us. And so something must be done to correct that dishonor, to restore God's honor and glory. That's where Anselm's satisfaction theory emerges. And then eventually, by the time you get to the Reformation, and this was going to entail things like double imputation and all these other sort of doctrines, Reformed doctrines, but that's where you get to the idea of penal substitution, that there is punishment for sin. It is an infinite punishment, right? And this idea of substitution that Christ takes it instead of us, right? Sort of absorbs that punishment, which has an endless array of, I mean, it destroys Trinitarian doctrine if you understand the Trinity. It wrecks Christology. It imposes necessity on God, because it says that essentially, when you're at the point of penal substitutionary atonement, you have a God who is not merciful because he can't be. He has to punish every sin to the fullest extent, right? He either has to punish Christ or punish you.
Right.
He can't forgive anything. He can't show mercy on any. The Greek word used for mercy in most of the New Testament literally means not punishing something to the full extent. And so that's why I say you end up with a God who's merciless, functionally. And justice then is this thing that's telling God what he has to do. And it's like, well, why aren't we worshiping that then? Because clearly that's above him or pre-exists him in some way or is prior to him. So yeah, there's no end of, I mean, penal substitutionary atonement just does not work with Christian theology at all.
Interesting. What do you think about I've heard this type of argument used, that if someone was going to articulate PSA as like the Father damned the Son, wouldn't that be kind of Nestorian? Do you think it's a valid?
Well, you're good at that. That's where Calvinism goes.
Mm-hmm.
You read like Peter Vermigli, right? He's just an historian, right? The wrath is poured out on Christ's human nature, on the human Christ, and not his divine nature. Because if you don't do that, then you have the Trinitarian problem.
Right,
of dividing the Trinity. So if you don't divide the Trinity, you're going to have to divide Christ and be an historian. Now, if you're William Lane Craig, who is a heretic on literally every point of doctrine and not a Christian, I've said this publicly before, he is not a Christian. He does not believe in the Trinity. He does not believe in the dual nature of Christ. He holds to heresies condemned by every ecumenical council. He rejects every single one of them, and he rejects the Nicene Creed.
Does he really reject the Nicene Creed?
Yes.
Wow.
Okay, so he's as Christian as a Mormon is. We'll put it that way. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know if you know how far this goes. Recently, he laid out his old doctrine of the Trinity used to be comparing the Trinity to Cerberus, the three-headed dog.
Did he really? I saw he issued, like, he wrote a book and then had to issue a retraction on what he said because it was Christological heresy or something.
His new doctrine of the Trinity is he compared Christ to a cat skeleton, because a cat skeleton has the feline nature, but is not a cat all by itself.
That's tough.
Yes. So this is what I'm talking about. But anyway, so if you're William Lane Craig, he has what he calls a neo-Apollinarian. Apollinarianism being a condemned heresy, right, of the 4th century.
Right.
A neo-Apollinarian Christology, where he says that basically the divine logos is the soul in Christ. So it's a human body animated by the divine logos. That's his view of Christ. And so he literally, when I challenged him on this, said, well, his Christology lets him out of that problem with penal substitution.
Mm-hmm.
Because he says that on the cross, the second person of the Trinity, right, the divine logos, departed from Jesus, separated from, and then the human parts that were left received.
What a mess. You're turning my brain into a fried egg right now, just thinking about.
Sorry about that.
how much I didn't realize he was that rough. I saw him on Gavin's show a little while ago talking about real presence and how he disagrees with that particular doctrine. But so I started to dig into it, what he actually believed, and I saw a couple of things about a book he had wrote, and he had gotten some things about Christology wrong, but I didn't know he was that rough. That's wild to me.
Yeah, so part of the way he covers it up is he won't debate other Christians.
Oh,
he'll only debate atheists.
Nice.
So he'll go and have a debate with an atheist about the existence of God. Well, he believes in the existence of a God, right? So he can
a cat skeleton.
But my response to him has always been, I don't consider you a fellow Christian, so debate me, right? Like,
there you go. The gauntlet has been slapped down. I think